On today's episode of the Glue Guys, basically Brian and I are trying to figure out ways to talk about the Nets by not talking about the Nets. We will do that with a conversation about Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving reacting to KD's podcast, The Etceteras, where he opened up his brain just a tiny little bit and told us how he felt about the trade. We also have an amazing killer comparisons, and we will talk about the current state of this team because
it's great.
It's a disaster.
Great, let's get into it.
Welcome back to the Glue Guys. This is Mike here. Say hello, Brian.
Hello.
Check us out on Twitter at
Oh,
BK Glue Guys, netsdaily.com, The Athletic. Get yourself on the paywall at theathletic.com/Glue Guys, a subsidiary of the New York Times Company. Again, every time I say that, we are a part of the New York Times.
Mike,
we are inches
your
away.
Your dream achieved. Global coastal elites, truly.
But honestly, what is better for our podcast? Being on the New York Times' orbit or being on netsdaily.com? I mean, netsdaily.com.
One and the same. Anyways, enough about us. Mike, let's get into the show.
Brian, we are potting after the Nets, the descent into darkness. Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Feels good. Feels home. Feels like home. Feels it feels amazing. No, I was streaming the game last night on Twitch. For those who don't know about that, obviously you don't know because you're not in the Discord, so I don't know what to tell you. Discord.gg/GuGuys, and I did turn off the stream at halftime. Like that was the earliest I've ever shut it down because it wasn't just that it was disgusting to watch, but it was disgusting to watch, and it was against the Knicks. Multiplier of disgustingness. It was unwatchable. So why does this keep happening to us, Mike? And I can't tell if it's small sample size theater or if we're just unlucky, but like ostensibly we're supposed to be a 3-and-D wing all the way around defensive juggernaut of a team, and then basically one out of every 2 games we just get hit with a barrage of threes that just put us out of the game relatively quickly, or they wait to the end for that to happen, or whatever happens, but just the wheels fall off at some point and we don't have enough offense to put the wheels back on.
The Nets need to fire Jacques Vaughn now.
No. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, how much do we...
Who spoke to this?
Oh, please.
The new net, one of the new Nets, Cam Johnson.
Okay.
He was asked after last night's game, basically like, you guys seem to be a team that should be good on defense. Mm-hmm. Why aren't you? And he was like, yeah, it's very confusing. He even said we should be by far easily in the top half of the league defensively with the guys that they have. The thing I was most excited about post-trade, because he tried to figure out a way to get excited after trading Kevin Durant, and it stung. It stung like a hornet's nest seeing Kevin Durant warm up, Kevin Durant play for the Suns.
Yeah, I couldn't watch that.
Kyrie, I don't care. I was jubilant, and I understand this. It's a sticky wicket. The fact that Kyrie leaves is the reason why Kevin Durant left, and all that stuff. The whole team, it all is tied together. The good and the bad, the sweet and the sour.
Which, speaking of that point, I mean, having listened to the recent episode of The Etceteras with Kevin Durant in front of the show, Eddie Gonzalez,
friend of the show, Eddie, who I bodied on Twitter,
who Mike has had a long tete-a-tete with. That was interesting. Did you listen to that, Mike? Did you? Because yeah.
Shout out to Eric Slater, who I don't know, but he retweeted some of the videos from The Etceteras. What was so basically the headline out of it? KD has not talked to Kyrie, but they will decompress and chop it up at some point. There'll be some chopping.
That was the headline, is that they are planning to have a sit-down chat.
That's what. Well, that's why I don't work for the New York Times in that capacity.
Yeah.
Like I'm trying to think of some horrific event in history. I'd have been like,
and then
discussions are being had. People will chop it up. But KD had said, basically he's like a character in Severance. His mind has been split in two. His basketball mind, yeah, sure, he was upset and he wanted to see this Nets thing continue with Kyrie. But as a human, as a friend, his other part of his brain, he understands that Kyrie was doing what was best for him. We all have to operate in our own circles, we have to make our own moves. And Kyrie was making moves. My hands are up in the air, Brian. For the podcast audience, they're up in the air because I still think what Kyrie did was incredibly dumb. DUMB. I think it was worse for him and his money moves to do what he did But essentially, Kevin Durant was like, I would have liked to have seen us try it out, but also I don't hate Kyrie Irving.
I think there's more to the subtext there, because it's interesting in the player empowerment era, watching players sort of dance around the minefield of talking about other players, especially superstar players. It's interesting because there's like a lack of, in as much as they're like held to a different standard in the media, just talking about things generally, which is, I'm sure, super annoying. The one thing that they truly are not able to, and this is maybe self-enforced, they're not able to talk about other players like in a incriminating or not incriminating, or just like in any kind of critical,
like truthful, emotional way.
Right. And it is this like sort of, they defer to this like, well, it's about, the business decisions, and like in, business there's, all is fair and whatever. And they just do this massive deferential thing. And so it's interesting to kind of like try to pick out the subtext, little nuggets here and there with what Katie was saying. But the pull quotes that I pulled out were like things like "at our expense." That's he used that line to describe Kyrie's decision. It hurt. Kyrie is polarizing. There is a subtext, and I don't want to do this thing where you're like blowing it out, because he was very middle of the road, generally speaking, but maybe this is my.
That's also why that podcast is no good. But yeah.
Hey, come on. Shut up. Shut up.
Hey, the Boardroom's a shitty website.
Whoa.
Rich Kleiman's a bad agent.
Whoa.
And the etceteras is not.
Mike,
actually, the Boardroom really is a very good follow on Twitter and Instagram. I will say that they do a great job of like doing the whole, here are the top 10 money makers in concert, in music. Here are the top, I care about what money people make.
Sure.
I will. If anyone tweets out salaries, I'm following.
This is what
my favorite article every year is the USA Today epic of how much college football coaches make across the country, because they get, Freedom of Information Act information. Anytime you tell me the money. So I do like the Boardrooms. And Anthony Puccio, a friend of the show, who works for the Boardroom now. I'm happy for him. But the Etceteras is not a good podcast. I mean, it in the arc of NBA player-led podcasting, it is, if you listen just to the content, it's sort of like that Redbox movie that is starring Denzel Washington, but is like a bad Denzel movie.
Okay.
But it's on Redbox, so you're like, it's just $1. Maybe it's good.
Yeah.
Whatever. It stars Kevin Durant, the Etceteras, but it's a bad podcast.
Yeah,
there's very little etc. going on.
I wouldn't break out my flamethrower in the way that you have. I think that
they're not on the team.
We're dancing around.
They're never
the same
coming
thing.
back.
Yeah, is that it's sort of like this new media of like players sort of propagandizing from their perspective is like an interesting and maybe necessary sort of counterfactual to what's happening in other independent or traditional
players
media.
Having their own podcasts is
I'm not.
Like Bill Simmons or something. Like,
yeah.
It is fantastic that players have their own podcasts and that they have their own ways to communicate with their fans. And there are plenty of podcasts that are just like Up in Smoke or All the Smoke, and the one with Quentin Richardson, Darius Miles is super fun. They had Hidu Turkoglu on recently, and Hidu was hilarious talking about how JJ Redick was a completely annoying player to have on his team.
Wow.
And I love JJ's pod. Draymond's has had moments, but anyways, I don't need to bury the etceteras any more than I have.
Oh yeah, you're doing a jig on the grave here.
We're unleashed. We're unleashed,
Mike has been unleashed for a while. But hey, I'm here for it. I support you.
I'm unmasked. Yeah, sorry.
I don't know what I was talking about before that happened, but anyways,
you were talking about what Kevin Durant had to say.
Yeah. So there's some. I think there's enough. Like there's a trail of breadcrumbs to suggest that there is, as much as we don't like to admit it, there's an emotional response to what Kyrie did. Obviously, KD's not going to be able to like walk through like, okay, so why did he have to make this difficult business decision? It's because Kyrie did a series of things over the course of the last few years that put himself into a precarious business negotiation sort of anti-leverage position. Whatever, that's neither here nor there. He did call that him polarizing as a figure, which I thought was at least a somewhat of a nod to what we've been talking about here for a long time. But in general, I mean, it's just listening to that kind of stuff it's interesting. It's interesting to see, in particular, Kevin Durant's response to all this. And I go back to him like crying or borderline crying at the Phoenix presser thing.
Yeah.
But I wish I knew. I wish I knew that there was all this emotion just under the surface. It didn't feel that way at any point. And and this idea that, like, you know, basically business is, everything is sort of secondary, ancillary to the business decision that people have to make is, I mean, this is sort of this like weird kind of afterbirth of the player empowerment movement where like now there's just no it's like we're playing a game and then there's just like this other game to be played outside of it, which is, you know, just like the business mechanics of things. And there's no, like, you're not even allowed, they kind of defer to like, it is what it is, you know, it's this, it is what it is sort of aw shucks kind of thing. It's like, you know, you do have influence. You're a pretty important person, Kevin Durant, on your team, whatever team that is. And like, you know, you don't have to say this, but like, I would have liked to be like, hey, I sat down with Kyrie. We had a long conversation. It was just like, yeah, he did this, and then I did that. It just seems very reflexive and not thought through or whatever. I just can't. And then there's an emotional sort of outburst at a press conference not long after. It just seemed very, I don't know, like where is that leadership? Whatever. I know we talk about that and it's foo-foo stuff and who cares.
But it's true. So this was something that, you know, was talked about. You know, like Kendrick Perkins would get on, even though Perk played with KD, and he would talk about how, you know, KD is not a leader, or, you know, and Charles Barkley loves to talk about how Kevin Durant is not a true leader. And I always kind of like push back on that, be like, you know, there's different types of leaders. We all don't need to be. I mean, Michael Jordan, frankly, was a pretty shitty leader. He was just so amazing, singularly in the moment. At clutch moments, he was different.
It's different leadership styles. I mean, it gets, if leadership, if championships is the ultimate goal, you can't deny that what his leadership style was. It resulted in championships.
Yeah, I just don't like the Jordan Kobe. I'm going to make everyone else around me feel shitty, and then at some point
you don't like it because you're a beta, and you would be the Scotty Burrell and in that situation.
But listen, Kevin Durant, as amazing as a player as he is, he talks about this all the time. He just loves to hoop. And he, you know, we can't expect every single great basketball player to also then have this amazing Svengali like, you know, effect on other people in terms of able to convince them to do something that maybe they don't want to do, or kind of trick them, or part of leadership is getting people to do maybe what they don't need to do in the moment, right? He doesn't do that. He never did it over his time. There were so many times where he could have stepped in to talk to Kyrie. Sure, telling Kyrie to get vaccinated would have been, even though I probably advocated for that on the show, that's a lot, right? To tell someone you need to get vaccinated, even though the Warriors did it to Andrew Wiggins. But there were all these other things, and particularly in this moment, that moment when Kyrie and the Nets had their contract negotiations, whatever they were, at right around the trade deadline, and then Kyrie was like, "Screw this, I'm gonna go nuclear, and I'm gonna ask for a trade in the middle of a season when your team had gone on a 12-game winning streak when you played with Kevin Durant." I mean, we don't talk enough, again, about how insanely selfish of a decision Kyrie made. He made a ridiculously selfish, not unprecedented, but rare decision for a basketball player. When we look at player empowerment, for the most part, player empowerment occurs in the offseason. You know, these guys ask out in the offseason. Look at James Harden. As everyone made fun of James Harden for being fat and partying during the COVID crisis, and deciding, I want to be out of Houston. He did it in the offseason and then did it in preseason. Kyrie did it right when the team was like maybe going to get Kevin Durant back in a few weeks. And to get back to Kevin Durant, he just he just was never that guy. He was never going to be the guy who would go and tell another player, you need to do this, or hey, can we figure out a solution so we can get through this season? Yeah. He should have had that sway and that relationship with Kyrie to just be like, Kai, like, it's not helping you to ask for a trade right now. It's not help. Like, if you think it is, It's not. And
yeah, and I think
this team gets exploded because Kevin Durant is not that type of leader, and Kyrie is a complete, wild card.
And what I think we're both kind of saying the same thing through a different lens, and it's just like I think that something about the player empowerment movement has made it so that players feel like they can't like make even small and you had a great example. I mean, if Kevin Durant is like, yo, we got to win some basketball games here, and in order to do that, you need to get vaccinated. Like, how much would that have mattered? I don't know. I think it would have mattered considerably, and maybe that conversation happened. I have no idea. But it's a conversation that probably can't happen in this climate.
That's why I was like, I don't know if I want to bring the vaccine thing, because that is a sensitive, of course, it's a very sensitive topic, and
stupid that it's sensitive. Anyways, let's move on. We can.
One small thing. You talk about the emotions of Kevin Durant.
Mm-hmm.
I think from listening to the Etceteras and KD's press conference before that, and the emotions that he displayed, I do think that this was a very quick decision by Kevin Durant to want to get traded. And it does, I think, link back to the offseason when he requested a trade. I do think that there was an agreement between Josiah and KD that KD will come back and play, which is what he did. But if I ever want to get out, you have to, you will honor that, right? Mm-hmm. And Josiah seemed to, from all the reporting, was very involved in the Kevin Durant trade, according to Woj. So I think what happened, the Nets did their thing with Kyrie. Kyrie gets traded, and KD, pretty quickly just said, now I want out. Because I don't think they make the Mavs trade. I think they trade Kyrie to the Lakers for Russ and the 2 firsts, as opposed to Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith. Dorian Finney-Smith has no utility on this team. If he's not playing with like a Luka, Trae Young level star.
Oh, okay, easy.
So I like Dorian Finney-Smith just fine. He's just never going to score points.
Yeah,
he's just that kind of guy.
It's not happening.
But anyway, so I think the emotions. If we see over, KD's not playing chess, and I don't mean that as an insult. He's very much like, I want to win basketball games. I want to play great basketball. That's what I want to do. He's not like LeBron, where he's thinking 4 years ahead, planting seeds, planning out his future. And I think pretty quickly, again, from the Etceteras podcast and everything that we've seen, I just think he made that decision very quickly. And then the Nets, Joey, Tsai, and Matty Ishbia got together and just made that deal.
Let's talk about the team now, though, right?
Yeah, let's do a little bit of the team, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll do killer comparisons. But the team now, should they tank?
I mean, do we have a choice? Is a real question.
Yeah, I will say this. This is something to think about. So the Nets are the 6th seed right now. They are not looking very good in this new incarnation of the Nets. For anyone who could have just stopped watching, which I can't imagine, I feel like everyone has some awareness of what this team has been. The Nets are giving up 2 times over the past 3 games. They give them 140 points.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not good.
Not
that's not good statistically.
Room for improvement. Yeah.
I didn't really dig into the numbers on that, but that's not good. So they have 34 wins. Just to let everyone know, the Bulls, who are the 11 seed, have 29 wins. There are 20 games left in the season. For the Nets to truly tank and get out of the entire playoffs, get out of the play-in, because I'm pretty sure this is true. If you are a play-in team, your lottery odds are I don't know. I have to look at the exact odds. I think there is a difference between the 10th team in the East and the 11th team. Mm-hmm. I think there's some layer of difference. There's 20 games left. The Nets would have to do an unbelievable tank job to get completely outside the playoffs and really improve their odds, and just to set the table. And you're looking like they may be doing that.
I think it's happening. I don't.
Do you think it's intentional, or do you think it's just happening?
Let me think about that. I think it's
just happening.
I think it's just happening. Unfortunately, I don't think. Well, I think about this actually, which is interesting. The timing of the Jacques Vaughn extension for me makes me think a little bit that there is Jacques Vaughn doesn't want a whole bunch of losses again on his permanent record without some kind of long-term agreement in place. I would imagine. And so if he's like, if we're going to be bad / and/or tank, I do want some kind of protection against, the fact that this is not my fault. So anyways, the timing of that was interesting for me just because it's like, okay, let's set up this guy for a long-term investment into this thing and basically create a little cloud cover to suggest that this is not necessarily Jacques Vaughn's losses on his chin.
I can't say I just think it's the team. I mean, like, what is Jacques Vaughn doing that's making the team lose? Like, to do that, he would actually put Ben Simmons back on the floor and play him. I mean, there's such weird stuff with Joe Harris and Seth Curry. I mean, Joe Harris is like, God, I don't want to get mean with Joe Harris. But here's the difference in lottery odds, just so everyone knows. Last year, Cleveland was the last team, had the best record that didn't make the final 16 playoff teams. They got knocked out in the play-in. They had 0.5% chance at the top lottery pick. Mm-hmm. Charlotte was the next team.
Where did they end up picking? Do we know? Sorry.
Cleveland?
Yeah.
I think they didn't rise up. You don't rise up unless if you get into the top 4.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So, and they did not get into the top 4 picks. So Cleveland has a 0.5%. Charlotte, so that's the second to last team in the lottery, has 1%. Third to last team is 1.5. Fourth to last has 2%. Then it goes up to 3%, 4.5%. So, like, sure, there's a difference between the 4% and whatever, and the odds are different. I mean, like, again, you could sneak into the top 4. So it's just because you have a 2% chance at the top pick, you may have like an 8% chance at the 4th pick. Just for clarification for everyone, the Nets have a swap with the Rockets. Well, the Rockets are going to be a top 4 team, pretty much guaranteed. So if the Nets somehow rise up and get the number 1 pick in the draft, sure, they lose it to Houston. But it also probably means Houston has like the 4th pick. Mm-hmm. It would be incredible, right? It would be incredible. I think the way things are trending now, the Nets will be in the lottery. If we consider losing in the play-in as being a lottery team. And to really drill down on that, like, that's not great, right? Mm-hmm. That stinks. And it will just make the fan base hungry to make a big trade already. Yeah. Remember when we were like, we should just ride this out? You know what? I don't want to ride it out. I don't want to watch bad basketball, man. I watched Kevin Durant for...
It took 5 games of no KD and Kyrie. And
yeah, I'm like, let's get traded.
Now we have to sit with the consequences, Mike, of what you've done.
Let's do this quick break, come back. Killer Comparisons, really fun show. And we're back, Brian.
Yeah, hit me. Yeah, those are the good old days.
Do you just like flash back to when you were recording that?
In the
submarine. Brian's voice for everyone who don't know. That is Brian.
In the submarine basement.
The versatility in your voice is incredible.
No, I appreciate that.
This is Killer Comparisons. The form of what this will be has altered a bit as we got creative with it.
Yeah.
Essentially, Killer Comparisons, movie character intros to Nets players.
I'm gonna take the intros out of it because I think intros is where we got all mixed up. It's just more character arcs.
Arcs.
That's where I sort of see us.
Yeah. So I like it because we have new Nets, and we felt like that's where the intros started of like, your introduction to these players, intros to movie characters or actors or actresses. But again, why put a bottle on greatness? Why sealing it?
And I also think as sort of the precursor for this amazing idea that we've had was the conversation of like why Kyrie and KD, that era was ultimately like kind of annoying and stale, because it was the same storyline over and over again. And there wasn't a natural arc to this. Like, we're at the beginning of something right now. We have a lot of people.
What are we at the beginning of?
Beginning of the end, who knows what. But like you were saying, what is it, SVU, you had some kind of comparison to.
Yeah, it was like with the Kyrie KD era, it was the case of the week. The SVU era, it was like, what bloody murder will befall the Nets at this point? Things could look good, and then just, and by the way, rest in peace, Richard Belzer. I think that's his name, right? The guy.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Okay. I was just thinking of another comparison for it. It was like, as I think about the Marvel films, like the whole thing is basically like, how can we get all the same, like the important people in one room together and just like fight the bad guy with all the pieces? Everyone's just off doing their own quest. It's like, can we just get like whatever Doctor Strange and whoever the other important people are in the same room together and just beat the guy? And that seems to be very hard for people.
Yeah, it's very hard to people.
Yeah. Anyways,
do you want to start us off?
I have a funny one to start us off.
Please.
So I started off with Mikhail Bridges.
Perfect.
And I did Verdell, which is the name of the dog in As Good as It Gets. So let me walk. That he's the catalyst for the change that happens in the Jack Nicholson character.
Okay. I'll do my Bridges after, but it's so funny. Okay. That we both thought similarly.
He himself has a very, sort of, there's cat people and dog people. He's got a very dog person kind of personality, as far as I understand that. But then also,
yeah, I mean, there's a whole. Are you referencing the New York Times story about his dog?
No, I wasn't.
Do you not even know that?
I know.
There was, I forget who it was, Tanya Gangulia, or I don't know how to say her name, and I apologize. I don't mean that disrespectfully. She's a writer for the New York Times, and she wrote a whole story about Mikhail Bridges and Campaign's dogs, how they're best friends, and how Campaign had to break it to Bridges' dog that the dog was gonna have to live in Brooklyn and not live and have like a great life with Campaign's dog. It was a beautiful story.
That sounds amazing. So anyways, well, it's all tying in very closely. I didn't even know that.
Maricopa County.
But if you haven't seen As Good as It Gets, run out to your Blockbuster, rent that on VHS.
That was a huge movie.
It was a huge one. But Jack Nicholson is sort of a disgruntled superstar writer in his own right. And Verdell the dog is the catalyst for change in his heart, Mike, and sets him on a new path of redemption.
That is hilarious that you went that direction, because here's what I went for Bridges.
Yeah,
he is Tom Hanks in You've Got Mail.
Interesting.
Listen to this.
A psycho stalker, internet stalker. Gotcha.
Okay, like Tom Hanks and You've Got Mail. So the Nets fan base is similar to Meg Ryan in this way. The initial meeting between Hanks and Meg Ryan is through the internet. They were email chat buddies, right? I think that was the thing. They would write emails to each other. The You've Got Mail. That's the whole point of it. And for us, we got introduced to Bridges through these trade rumors in the off season, and our emails were NBA trade machines. You fast forward into that movie. The way Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan actually meet is when Tom Hanks goes into the shop around the corner, the little bookstore, with I think it's his brother, the little kid. I think that's technically his brother or his uncle. I forget what the whole classification of that. The little kid is like Woj Shams. Like the little kid was spelling out Fox to Meg Ryan. And Tom Hanks was like, no, don't, he's just spelling out things, when that was his last name. And it was really like Woj and Shams. They were the warning sign of our looming life change. That little kid was warning Meg Ryan, your life's about to change. Fox. They were telling us our life's about to change. Then, like Nets fans, we learned who Mikhail Bridges really was. This is the guy that's going to put us out of business. Okay. He's the guy that's going to ruin this dynasty. Ultimately, like Tom Hanks puts Meg Ryan's shop around the corner out of business, right? That is what he's going to do. He's going to take and ruin all the little bookshops on the Upper West Side, not Upper East. Apologies.
Yeah, that's totally
okay. And then we begin to fall in love. We begin to fall in love with the villain. Not that Bridges is a villain.
Not at all.
But he is the harbinger of change.
Of corporate.
And in the end,
change.
We realize that he's actually the one that we love. He is, in fact, the guy that we're meant to be with. Because if you remember, Meg Ryan was with another man, Greg Kinnear, who was in
As Good as It Gets.
As Good as It Gets.
Wow. Really timed
And
this
Kevin
together.
Durant is Greg Kinnear. He's the original love interest, but was there really love there?
No.
Were we just sort of like roommates really like.
And Greg Kinnear was just sort of a stat patter, in his own academic sense. Not that Kevin Durant. Actually, that's super unfair to Kevin Durant. That's not what he is.
Yeah. And he had a wandering eye. And ultimately, the breakup between Greg Kinnear and Meg Ryan in You've Got Mail is amicable. If you remember, that wasn't and with Katie, it was like for us, the Kyrie breakup was the thing that was ugly.
Yeah.
Right? The KD one was like, we all kind of get it. He shouldn't be here anymore. We should let him go hook up with the TV show host that Greg Kinnear hooked up with. Right? And the TV show host is Maricopa County, okay. The Phoenix Suns. So Mikal Bridges is You've Got God. Tom Hanks and You've Got Mail, and the Nets fan base is Meg Ryan. It is odd and funny that we both picked.
Yeah, movies of a certain era.
I think those movies are like the same area,
Greg Kinnear
right?
Movies of a certain era.
Greg Kinnear is the thread between all of this.
Really good. I've also got a bunch of people that are not new people, but I'll start with the new people just sure. A little bit. So Spencer Dinwiddie, for those who don't know, not a new person, right? So, is but isn't. So I went Han Solo from episode 7. 7? Is that right? 7.
7's A New Hope?
A New Hope.
No, wait,
no, that's 4. So it's 4,
no.
and then 1, 2, 3, and then 6, 7, 8, 9.
Do you mean when
the Force Awakens?
DIEs?
The Force Awakens.
You think he's Han Solo when he dies?
So he's Han Solo when he returns, and it's like, I'm a Han, like all that, all of what happened in the past is true. I was there for it, all that stuff. It's like a return. He's back. He's back in the.
And this new version is worse than the original version.
I mean, if you want to go there, it's just an old mercenary returning. I mean, it's still early on, but yeah, the Spencer Dinwiddie era part 2 has it's got a little dust on it. We need to clean up, but I'm not going to say he's dying. I didn't go for the dying part. I mean, yeah, sure, that happened to Han Solo. But good thread to tie that together. But you know what I mean? It's like, hey, I'm Han Solo. Yeah. I'm back in the franchise after.
You're playing like Tony Danza.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Han Solo.
Yeah.
I think Tony Danza did try for that role. Yeah. Question for you.
Yeah.
Han Solo good or bad at his job?
At his job? What is his job? Being a smuggler. Yeah,
to be a rogue smuggler, an expert pilot, a gunsman, a gunslinger. And if you think about it,
we were talking in our pre-production meeting. I'm going to get ahead of it. I'm going to spoil this for you.
This is theater.
I know.
It's
the fourth wall.
Brian.
I broke the fourth wall. I know. I loved it. Sorry. Go ahead. So give him the spiel.
Brian's in depth of a salesman. He's like, I was talking to the director about it. I was like, you don't talk to the audience. By the way, I've never seen Death of a Salesman. So
Does that happen? Yeah, I was going to say I don't remember that.
Waiting for Godot. Think about it, okay? Han Solo. First, he in A New Hope, he's like, I'm just going to leave. I'm going to take my money and run. And yeah, he comes back and he shoots out some sitting duck TIE fighters. I could have done that. It's not that impressive to fly over a scene.
What do you know and about it? You ever fly a freaking Millennium Falcon? Jesus.
I
said Millennial Falcon.
A Millennial Falcon. That was my nickname on the streets.
That's your other Twitter handle.
Empire Strikes Back. He takes them to the Cloud City, a place he never should have taken them. Like, they should not have gone to Cloud City. He should not have trusted Lando. He trusted Lando. He gets encased in carbonite like an idiot. And then, in Return of the Jedi, they have to use their best, the Rebel Alliance, which is a rough and tag, a little group of fighters against the Empire, has to use their 2 best resources.
Yeah.
Princess Leia, who's effectively the leader of the rebellion, and Luke Skywalker, who is the only Jedi on the good side. They've used both of those resources to get a smuggler encased in carbonite.
Yeah.
Why are we wasting resources, putting them at risk for a smuggler? And then he goes on and goes to was it Endor?
Yeah.
And gets captured by teddy bears.
By teddy bears. We were talking about this too. Like, how many Ewoks would it ultimately?
We were talking about it, Brian.
How many Ewoks would it ultimately take to take you down? Like, I feel like I could. I mean, he's a grown man. I don't know how tall Harrison Ford is. He looks like he's 6'1" at least. Probably $195.
He's handsome as hell.
You could pick up an Ewok and punt it into. I mean, honestly, you're gonna get caught by Ewoks. I wouldn't tell anybody about that. I'd keep that a secret as long as I possibly could.
And the first Ewok that comes up to you, you pop it in the throat and you toss it again into like a volcano, the rest of them are running away from you.
I mean, I'm just right now. I'm having like a fantasy about what I would do to that first Ewok that approached me. Is it a Kevin Nash jackknife powerbomb into the woods? You know, is it? I just kick it into a coma. You know, what is you do to that first Ewok?
The Ewoks would be treating me like a god that they thought C-3PO was. You know, like because the things I would have done to that Ewok, I would have ripped its. You know, they used to talk about how Chewbacca, Wookiees rip people's arms off when they lose.
That to the Ewok.
I would just rip its freaking arms off and eat it like a crab, like you have a crab leg, and be like, "You want to mess with me?
True. You have to go.
Oh, you have a stick? You have some rocks? I have a blaster.
Yeah,
and I have arms." That could rip you apart.
You have to completely out psycho whatever it is that's going against you. We've belabored this, but there's a lot there.
Han Solo bad at his job.
Yeah. Spencer Dinwiddie, though, how long is this episode going to be at this rate?
It's only at 35 minutes. We'll go quickly to the next one. Here's what I got. Joe Harris. Oh, you want me to do new players? I'll do new players first.
No, you
Dorian Finney-Smith. This isn't really true, but because this is tied to when we had movie character intros. But I had him as Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men when he did like the cattle gun thing.
Okay.
The air.
Walk me through that.
Like, as much as, Dorian Finney-Smith may not be a scorer, he is so long and he's so fearsome as a defender, potentially.
Okay.
I just don't think it really matches up because the team gives up 140 points per game.
And you just had Javier Bardem on the top of your mind. I could feel it. I mean, you know
why?
Why?
You don't really know why.
I don't.
Because I've been watching Lyle Lyle Crocodile with my kids, and Javier Bardem's in that.
Whoa!
And he gives a hell of a performance.
Whoa.
I suggested
that was not what I would have guessed. But you got him in there. You fit the square peg in a circle hole, one way or another.
What else you got?
I'm gonna do some old heads here. I've got. Do you know? All right, this is kind of like normie testing you, okay? So we're going to see where you are on this. Have you seen the film Akira, the acclaimed anime film?
No.
You've not? All right. That's okay.
I've heard of it.
You've heard of it. So I'm going to go Cam Thomas's Tetsuo from that, but you haven't heard of this movie. So, sorry, you have heard of the movie. You haven't seen it.
No, explain it to me.
Yeah, it's actually a really good comment. For those of you who have seen it, people are... it is unlocking things for them. I can tell. I can hear it through the podcast because in the movie, he plays a kid who kind of he's like this bullied, like picked on kind of kid in the run to the litter in a gang, in a street gang, who through a complicated situation comes to have telekinetic powers, becomes like this all powerful being, right, and kind becomes this antagonist in the film. Through his newly unlocked powers, and then the powers themselves begin to become all consuming, and he kind of he fills up literally a whole football stadium with like his body, right? He can't control the telekinetic powers and just expands and fills up the entire thing and then explodes in a nuclear. So anyways, the point that I'm trying to make is that Cam Thomas is he's kind of this run to the litter, but when he's in those 3 40-point games, it's only Cam Thomas, right? He can't even be Cam Thomas. Like we talked about this, he needs to play for a bad team in order to be good. And it can't even be like a decent team. He needs to play for an apocalyptic wasteland of a team. Like there cannot be anybody else but him in order for him to do the thing that he needs to do in order to reach full potential.
He's Wally if the positive, he has to live on a desolate planet. Wally.
Sure. Yeah. That's a different way in from where
is that the thing I've said on the show that you like the least?
No,
like it?
No, it
seemed like
I just think
hate it.
you're just so your points of contact immediate. I love them. They're just so different from mine. And that's why the yin and the yang of this works. But anyways, go. Hey,
besides us
Mike,
literally doing late 90s rom-coms.
Yeah. Put Akira on the top of your list, Mike. You'll hate it. You will absolutely hate it and fall asleep.
No, I'll try.
Yeah.
I'll do 2 shorties. Ben Simmons is a clicker from Last of Us because you hear about him way more than actually see him, and then he just brings havoc and disease and ruins their team.
Wow.
Second short one. Nick Claxton. I told you this one on the pre-show meeting, so this won't shock you. And I apologize that this is going to ruin the movie, but here's the thing.
Oh, spoilers? Guys, spoiler. What's the movie? And then tell them the spoiler. Just so
the movie is Power of the Dog. It came out on Netflix. It was an Oscar-nominated film. Here's the thing. No one saw it at the time.
I saw it.
I don't feel bad ruining it because you're not going to watch it if you haven't watched it. It's one of those, it's just you're not going to watch it.
Yeah.
But there's a character in it played by, I think the actor's name is Cody Smith McPhee.
Oh, you think? Okay.
He is he was also in the movie Elvis, which is odd. But he is an actor who's very tall and skinny. And his character in The Power of the Dog is he seems like this innocent sort of young man who is going to be like abused physically by Benedict Cumberbatch. And in the end, he becomes a murderer.
Yeah.
And Nick Claxton, when he entered the Nets world, was this wispy little, lengthy, long, young pup who we were afraid was going to get abused by the Joel Embiids of the world.
Yeah.
And in fact, he's become not a murderer, but, a pretty decent, he's got muscle. Is he going to be a killer? I don't know, but that's what I got.
Can I say I had Ben Simmons as Michael Corleone, but only in the part where he's in exile in Italy after killing Sollozzo and McCluskey, right? Those are the two power brokers, two power brokers in the city that are putting the screws to the family. And now he's just in Italy wearing nice clothes, drinking some wine. He's got
having sex with a teenager.
What? Apollonia is a teenager?
Apollonia is like 15.
Really? Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Let's cancel Michael Corleone for that.
This doesn't hold up. I did not know that part of it. Easy, everybody. But yeah, so I had that. I had a quick one for you. You want this one?
Yes.
I have Yuta Watanabe as Boba Fett from episodes 5 and 6. Because the audience knows he's cool, right? Everyone kind of is like, ooh, what's that Boba Fett all about? Like, you hear about him more than you see him in those films. And obviously, like, the fandom that arose out of it was disproportionate to the amount of time he's actually on screen. The filmmaker, George Lucas, didn't even know how cool Boba Fett was. So the powers that be, they're not even putting him on the screen very much. And everyone's like, yo, like, let me get more Boba in our life. Maybe they overdo it because, like, episode 2, I believe, Attack of the Clones, has maybe a little bit too much.
1,000 Bobas?
Maybe too much Boba Fett. They overdo it, potentially. So hopefully that's not part of there. Maybe that will be. Maybe they'll get a ton of run in this season. But don't threaten me with a good time, because that I could get into. And also they have kind of a similar name. Yuta, Boba, there's something there.
Yeah, he got that. My last one, Jo Harris is Katie Holmes, the actual actress in the Christopher Nolan Batman movies.
That's hilarious, because I have him as Alfred from the Christopher Nolan Batman movies.
Okay.
Yeah. Just a guy that's like there. He's like imparts.
Morgan Freeman?
Well, doesn't it start with Michael Caine?
No, Morgan Freeman is Lucius.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Michael Caine. I don't know if it's always Michael Caine.
Michael Caine. Yeah.
But anyways, do your thing first, and then I'll attack mine. That's hilarious, although we both chose different characters from the same movies.
Do you remember Katie Holmes in the Nolan movies?
Yeah, I do.
She was in the first one. She was Erica or whatever her name was.
Rachel.
Yeah. And we thought that she was going to be a crucial character, right? I mean, she was Batman's girlfriend. She was Katie Holmes, very famous. Thought she was going to be a crucial role player in a long-running, reoccurring role. But Katie Holmes gets replaced by Maggie Gyllenhaal and literally replaced during the run of a franchise. And Jo Harris is getting replaced. Like, he is... There's no way he plays in Brooklyn next year. Particularly if they have this kind of team. Like, if they hold on to Bridges and if they re-sign Cam Johnson, Jo Harris is flying away on the first flight out of LaGuardia.
Yeah.
I mean, he is getting replaced. And we thought, again, that Jo Harris was crucial. Remember the conversations that we had? Like, Jo Harris was one of the reasons why the Harden, Katie, Kyrie season, where Harden then gets traded for Ben Simmons, was like, oh, but they don't have Jo Harris. If they had Jo Harris, everything would be okay.
Yeah.
Not that important. Like, I don't love Jo Harris. He's just not that important.
So I'm keying into the fact that that hasn't happened yet, and he's just been around for this hilarious period of chaos and shenanigans all around. The world is cracking apart, and he's just serving tea, dropping sort of innocuous maybe lines of wisdom to whatever star player du jour is on the team or not. Just sort of above the fray, but only because he's just never was invited to the fray anyways. He's not powerful enough of a character to be in the fray. So he's just sort of there watching the world pass by and be like, yeah, it's, those are bad guys, they watch the world burn, whatever, that kind of thing. So that's, I went for more of of that, but maybe that's hard on Joe Harris. It could be a blistering last 20 games of the season for Joey Buckets.
Well, someone sent me this, Joe Harris's mom on Twitter, like right after Kyrie and KD gets traded. She said this on Twitter: "A leader sees greatness in other people. You can't be much of a leader if all you see is yourself." Quoting Maya Angelou.
Wow.
And the person who DM'd us, Elijah Brockman, said,
you're doxing her?
No, I mean, he DM'd us. I'm sure he wants credit.
Oh, okay. I don't know how people are with that.
Is this shade from? It's, he's on Twitter. It's public.
Yeah, okay.
Shade from Joe Harris's mom to Kyrie. That's what he asked. I'm like, I mean, I don't know if Alice Harris is always, like if she's having a bunch of Nets takes, but
I mean, I know that quote says Maya Angelou, but it could very well say Alfred Pennywise or whatever the hell his name is. I think it's Pennywise.
Can you do a little Michael Caine for us before we leave?
Michael Caine. So
that's my favorite kind of impression when you just say
the name. Michael
Clint Eastwood. You just say that name. All right.
We did it, Mike.
We did it. I thought this was a great show.
A classic Glue Guys episode, which is just turning lemonades out of flat. You know the deal. Anyways, Mike, get us out of here.
Find us on Twitter at BKGlueGuys, netsdaily.com, The Athletic. Get yourself by the paywall at theathletic.com/GlueGuys, a subsidiary of the New York Times. Brian.
Michael.
Goodbye.
Thanks.